engaging with the customers is rapidly changing, especially in this pandemic world or post-pandemic world, hopefully. The thing is, are we truly going digital, or is the brick and mortar way of retailing still here to stay for a while, or is it a combination of both? To discuss this and more, we have a very eminent panel today, which I'd like to introduce. We have with us Shashank Srivastava, Executive Director of Maruti Suzuki. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have Martin Schwenk, the Managing Director of Mercedes-Benz India. And from the insurance side and giving his perspective, we have Rakesh Jain, the CEO of Reliance General Insurance. Gentlemen, thanks very much for giving me your time to join this panel. And I'd like to start with comments from you, Shashank. You represent the largest automaker in the country. Maruti is always the bellwether of the industry. With your thoughts. Now, Shashank, the straight question is, has COVID-19 permanently changed the way we buy cars, or are we going back to the old normal, the sense that's happening? Has digitization resulted in less frequent walk-ins? Are people spending more time online? So just to get your sense on how the whole, we've had this disruption. It's definitely changed things. Is it permanent? Are we on a path for, a more digital way of doing things? We are in other ways. But is the retail process really, set for a complete overhaul?
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, Hormazd, for having me on the panel. Sorry. So I think when we research deeply into the process of buying cars before the COVID and subsequent to the COVID, we do find that there are some elements of buying process which have changed dramatically. But many of them are, I think, reversible. But many of them are actually irreversible. So we'll first study what are those processes which are which we have observed as a change in consumer behavior when it comes to buying cars, and which we believe are irreversible. So first, for example, is this shift towards personal mobility. So we have seen after the COVID, because of safety conditions, because of greater concern for medical safety, people have shifted away from public transport. They've shifted away from shared mobility, and they are now moving more towards personal mobility. In fact, the increase has been 87%, according to some research reports. The other thing which we saw, and I think this is probably a reversible process. And I think as we overcome the virus, whenever it is, probably shared mobility and public transport, point-to-point transportation and the mobility solutions will once again come to the forefront. The second is that the buying during post-COVID or during the COVID was less experimentative. In other words, it was more for a utility buying. So what we saw was the first-time buyers going up almost 3%, the additional car buying going up 5%, and you had about the replacement buying, which is largely a buying for upgradation, went down by about 7%. So 46% first-time buyers became 48%, 30% additional car buying 35%, 26% replacement buying came down to 19%. This also, I believe, is partly reversible, although I must say it depends more on the demographic profile of our country, which for a very long time, I think this percentage is going to remain more or less similar. You might see changes in replacement buying and additional car buying, but I think the first-time buyers, last 20 years, by the way, Hormazd, has been the same, around that 47% first-time buying in the country. That's because of our demographics. Third is what we observed was a telescoping of demand, which means the segment at the upper end, the people go in for choices which are lower end. This is in response to lower incomes, lower bonuses, maybe less businesses. But I think this is something which is reversible. The fourth, and which I think is the irreversible factor, is the more digitalization. And the digitalization of the buying process, I think, is irreversible. Just to give an idea, the digitalization did start, we observed in 2016, roughly 2 to 3% of our inquiries coming from the web. Before the pandemic, it was about 13 to 15%. But just after the pandemic, it touched 50%. It has now stabilized at around 35, 38%. This, I believe, is irreversible. because as the internet spreads, the penetration in India spreads, I think this is going to increase. Fourthly, I think the media habits is now more digital. It's also more personalization that we see in the industry, and I think both of these are irreversible changes. This, I believe, is going to lead to some more changes in the future, which may be like asset-light purchase, like subscription and so on and so forth, which come in a different mobility solutions thing. And that factor also will play a major role in the industry going forward. Hormazd.
Very interesting, Shashank. But just before I let you go and turn to Martin, because very important, since you are so deeply entrenched in the rural market, do you see any difference between, let's say, the smaller towns, the tier 2, tier 3 towns, and the big urban metros? Some people say that digitization, or people in smaller towns are sometimes even more digitally savvy in that sense.
Correct. Actually, if you see, at least in the basic jobs and basic functions of digitalization, I think rural India cannot be underestimated, because if you see the internet users, the heavy internet users, the regular internet user, that's the term which researchers use. It's not just about internet connection, but using. In India, roughly around 590 million. Out of which 290 million is actually 293 million is in the rural areas. In other words, it's more than the urban areas. So I think there maybe the upper end of functions, the more sophisticated functions are less so, but I think rural penetration of internet and the usage is equally high, if not more, than the urban areas.
Right. And of course, data rates are very cheap, which has also driven that. And, Martin, I'd like to turn to you. You've heard what Shashank has said, given his thoughts on it. But, clearly you're at the other end of the spectrum. I would say, definitely different kind of customer, but some things remain the same. And this whole move towards, the online process, you've also taken a big plunge. You've done something which is quite revolutionary with your retail of the future, where you've kind of gone direct to the customer, making the dealers, let's say agents. But again, over there, a heavy reliance on technology, digitization, online, let's say the whole online ecosystem is even more critical for you. So clearly, I think, you've taken a big revolutionary step. So just your thoughts on that. And, again, what Shashank said, his kind of comments on rural really being, in a way, a bigger digital market than even the urban towns.
Well, let me first say, whatever Shashank has brought up, I think a lot of that we can subscribe to in the overall trends which we see overall. Personal mobility, everything you spoke about. And I would also see the digitization as a strong leverage. We have had hardly any online sales prior to the pandemic. We had our systems went up and we had 1 or 2%. When we launched for that 2 years ago, the systems itself, we said we will be by 2025 at 25% online share. That's what we communicated. I got a lot of questions mark around that. Right now we are around 20%, and that has been more or less stable with or without a COVID wave, I should say. The percentage has been much stronger than what we would have originally anticipated, and I would think it will sit on this level. But I would want to take the question a step further, because yes, we have completely changed the way how we do business, what we call retail of the future, and you may as well call it future of retail as the motto here for this plenum discussion. What I believe is important at the end is the customer experience itself. And there the customer will need, how can I say, a couple of things that he didn't get in the past. He will look for a seamless online and offline journey. Whether he is online or offline should not really matter to him or her. And that's also partially the answer to your rural question. I think we'll have to provide both channels in an appropriate way. And then if they complement each other, then it's possible to leverage, say, a larger or smaller big footprint of dealerships also in this way. So wherever you cannot be physically present, you will definitely have a stronger leverage also of the digital part, but at the end it should be seamless. And when I talk about the customer experience, then of course, when we say retail of the future, the idea is all about customer experience. It's about making the journey and the purchase experience very satisfying to customers. We have a couple of criteria there with this model which we're running now, selling directly to customers, but not only online, but using the existing, we call them now franchise partner network, has the real substantial advantages to the customer in that sense that they have complete confidence in what they buy. They have complete understanding on the inventory that is available. They have complete transparency on price and offers that are available. And that gives them a far better confidence in the purchase process itself. And I believe that is very important also going forward. So at the end, my answer is a little bit more complicated. It's not only brick and mortar or digital, it's creating something combining brick and mortar and digital. And I believe the new way of doing business here is really taking churn out of the customer experience and making sure that they have full transparency, be it on inventory, be it on prices, be it on the transaction itself, and make it an enjoyable experience.
Right. And, Martin, just before I turn to Rakesh, just a bit of the experience you've had, because I think you've really kind of been the first to, go for this model. Clearly, I don't know whether mass manufacturer could do it. I'll come to Shashank later, but what have been the challenges? Is it fundamentally technology, or that's really getting everything up to speed in your retail of the future experience? You've just sold 1,000 cars under that, so clearly it's been well accepted, and that's quite a sizable number. But just to share some of the challenges you faced in this.
I think the first one is the first challenge is to be sure what you want to do and how you want to approach it, and then you have to bring the conviction in the own team, but also we have to discuss with our dealers. Now we call them, as I said, franchise partners. You have to discuss with them what we suggest and really take them on the journey, whatever the journey is. And I think that is the core element of success that needs to happen. If that's not successfully done, then everything else will be very difficult. Besides that, obviously, completely redesigning the processes entails, in today's times, a lot of IT systems involved. We're talking here more than a dozen systems that need to interact to have at the end a front end in which the sales consultant can sell on behalf of Mercedes-Benz India to the customer in the showroom, also integrated with whatever happens on an online presence. So the IT challenge and to implement that is quite significant. You have different systems which are not necessarily, if you're an existing manufacturer like me, but I'm sure Maruti is similarly, or any other manufacturer, you have an existing IT landscape, and now you come and completely turn around the sales process. It creates a completely new IT requirement. So, and I can clearly say that was probably the biggest challenge. And I can also say, quite frankly, we had a couple of teething issues when we came live in October, which caused a lot of irritation as well. On the other hand, again, with having strong products and having very dedicated franchise partners, I found it very quickly turned around. We could fix the major issues that were in systems. I mean, the complexity is huge and cannot be underestimated. So today, I would say we have already a very well working machine here. And I'm very confident. Also, if you ask me about challenges, then I will also talk about the opportunities. I have done a couple of dealer visits. I've spoken to customers. I can clearly say after a few weeks, it's not only the numbers that speak for themselves. The sentiments are very strong, very positive on our franchise partner level and also on our customer level. They see clearly the benefit of, not having to haggle, having a price which has no handover or whatever fees on top. Everything is transparently presented to them. Inventories are clear. Pricing is clear, transaction is clear. So I can really see a huge benefit there. And I will maybe say one final thing. In the talks to the customers, it also becomes obvious to me that they rely a lot on the manufacturer, not only with the product, but also with their aspiration and their trust in the brand. And it's very difficult for an individual dealer to live up to, say, the brand itself. And that is what I think is helping a lot, that we have the trust of our customers and we do everything to fulfill it then.
Right. Thanks, Martin. Thanks for sharing your experience. I think for something that is quite unique. And just turning to you, Rakesh, you've heard both the OEMs talk about, what the opportunities are. I think even Shashank spoke about things which are, definitely going to stay and things which are moving back. But, as an insurance company, you're dealing a lot with the OEMs, you're dealing a lot with the consumers as well. What is your sense over, let's say, a digital sales experience, which we are seeing happening? I mean, clearly it's there in the front end. Does more need to be done in the back end? So, just wanted to get your thoughts on this, like taking the claims process more digitally for you and, what can be done to sort of enhance the whole digital experience?
Thanks, Hormazd. Thanks for having me on the panel. And I think one thing I must say upfront is when it comes to insurance, it is one of the purest, needs of a customer, because, as an insurance company, we handle the contingencies, the pain points of the customer, like an accident or falling sick and going to a hospital. So it indeed tests an insurance company, more granularly maybe on a more real-time basis in the digital world than we could think of. In some ways, if you see across the world, general insurers have adopted technology far more than many of the other people, even in the entire financial services space. So automation has been a bit of a backbone. It has also been a way to stay competitive. It has also been a way to engage with partners and customers. And to my mind, with passage of time or with COVID as an event, a life-changing event taking place, it has created a perfect, base for people to really go whole hog. As a minimum, what has been happening, if you ask me before COVID-19, was we were trying to connect the dots. We said we are part of the connected world. So we went to, say, Mercedes-Benz or Maruti, we connected with their dealerships and their partners, and we started issuing policies. We connected with, maybe the garages and all. But end of the day, most of the things were front-ended. The back-ended things which actually mattered to the customers, they still were reasonably brick and mortar. And if you ask me, the way things are evolving, if cars are going to be without engines, we need to really think in some way a dramatic shift. I personally feel that in an interconnected world, digital means basically end-to-end. It is not just the sales, it is like sales to, service engagement. The moment you say customer centricity means engagement with the customer, the domain becomes far wider than just insurance or far wider than a product. And this, to my mind, is the real, future of any kind of retail, not just, cars or insurance. It's like customer centricity will become like hyper local. You'll hyper personalize everything. You may want to chronicle an individual very different from another individual, even though they may have the same product, if you want to see. So I feel when I see the next 5 or 10 years, I think the true potential will be when we integrate the entire time and motion studies, when we integrate the entire process of repairs, replacement, again, the way we have done the front end back with, say, a Mercedes or a Maruti, that is the time the customer will really visualize the true benefits of digital. And that ecosystem, if you ask me, from a technology standpoint, is now almost in place. And it's just about taking that big call, what Mercedes is taking. I think if others also come around, and this is going to be industry-wide, this is not just about one and few. And I think the customers are going to love it. That is what they are trying to maybe see in a Zomato or a Swiggy today.
Right. No, that's interesting. In fact, I just wanted to, it's an interesting point you made that the front end is, quite digital, but the back end, also to make it a whole seamless kind of digital ecosystem, things need to be done at the back end, which I want to pose to both the OEMs. But Shashank, before anything, I just want to ask you, it's very interesting what Mercedes has done, going direct to customer. Do you think something like that is feasible for a huge volume, let's say OEM, or do you think the time is still not ready for it, or it could happen in time?
Yeah, so Hormazd, we are actually discussing two things. So when we started, we were talking of digitalization through the buying process of the consumer. And then we started discussing the direct to customer model.
Right.
So digitalization, if we set that topic aside for the time being, because now I think we are focusing on the topic of direct to customer model.
Yeah, I just wanted your thoughts on that, then come to the digital part. Yeah, so
yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So in the direct to consumer model, I think for a large volume player, at this moment, it's a little difficult to go purely with the direct to customer model. Because remember, at the moment, we have factories, we have stockyards from where vehicles are going to the dealers stock it. And when the consumers come in different parts of the country, and we are covering almost 3,000 cities where we have our outlets, both the rural outlets as well as the urban ones. So first of all, for example, if you look at Maruti Suzuki, roughly our stocks are about 150,000. 125,000 at the dealers, around 25,000. Not today, because today we have a semiconductor issue, so it's like very low today. So, but generally speaking, an acre of land stores 200 vehicles. So this would probably require something like a 750 acres, which is like 3.1 million square meter of storage space alone for us to actually start even thinking of delivering vehicles. So second, the transit times are quite different. So you may have a central warehouse or a stockyard, and the transit times can be quite different, which can be really irritating for a consumer. Third is what I believe, which is a good point about the system, which is direct to the customer, is there is no price haggling. There is a greater confidence. Maybe the dealer experience, which is dealership experience, which is there, is probably better if he's focusing only on that. In fact, I was just reading a research where they said, while it comes to selling, consumers, it's a US report, not Indian report, consumers are having less trust on salespeople than even politicians, which has happened very recently. So this is 8% for salespeople, 9% for politicians. So they are just behind politicians in terms of the trust that consumers have. But what we can do as an intermediate step, the bigger volume players, is to have regional stockyards. So which can reduce the turnaround times. And remember, maybe for larger, for small volume, but more luxury car makers, probably the transportation costs are not so important, in the sense that if suppose there is a person who books vehicle in, let's say, Siliguri, do you send vehicles from Pune to or someplace wherever to Siliguri, one vehicle? Because we don't do that. We are sending vehicles in lots of 10 or 8. That's because the transportation costs can be reduced. If we have stockyards, we can have a regular transportation between point to point. We have, by the way, about 6 stockyards, which we have started. As you know, Hormazd, we have Gurgaon capacity of almost 6,000. We have Manesar about 25,000. We have Gujarat 25,000. We have Bangalore 14,000. We have Siliguri about 3,000. We have Nagpur about 4,000. We have a current capacity of about 77,000. So if you look at the nitty-gritties, probably at this moment of time, for us, a stockyard model of regional stockyard model, well, because you now have a GST in place, which also helps us, reducing the transportation cost, reduces the turnaround time, reduces the inventory carrying cost for the dealer because the time is less. And at the same time, you are able to deliver to the consumer in the best possible way. The negative which I see in the direct to customer model is that it is operating only at the lower end of the funnel. So in the marketing funnel terms, when it comes to the selling part, the awareness and the consideration where the consumer is deciding to buy a car, that is something which also dealers do. While there is an overall brand, there is the head office which does the brand awareness, which it drives up the consideration. But research has shown that increasingly consumers are becoming brand agnostic. and they are looking for more than few vehicles when they decide on the choice. There, I think the selling portion also becomes important. So if in a case if somebody is considering, for example, a BMW with a Mercedes, for example, he may go to BMW also and physically to the Mercedes showroom also, may at some point of time decide to go for BMW rather than Mercedes because of something which the salesman is able to promise or give or etc. So on the top end of the funnel, I feel something which Maruti Suzuki it depends on dealers a lot, and that I believe is. But going forward with technology, I think technology is not going to be the issue, because we have enough digital platforms to manage both. That I think is going to be the way forward for Maruti Suzuki through the regional stockyards before we get into a model such as this.
Well, thanks, Shashank, for that perspective on your view on direct to customer. I'm sure Martin also would have something to say. But before I just want to just take on actually Rakesh's point, which was the other point on going full digital from front end to back end. I mean, do you think more needs to be done, let's say, for digitizing of catalogs? Other material, to kind of just make it even more seamless. Do you think there's still a bit of, work to be done at the back end, which actually, Rakesh was kind of not alluding to, but saying that, there's when it becomes completely integrated, that's when we can say, we'll get the efficiencies and, advantages of a fully seamless digital ecosystem. Yeah, Shashank, for you.
So you're talking of the backend digitalization?
Yes, I talk about the backend. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe everything can be digitalized in today's this thing, and that's what, irrespective of that direct to customer model or irrespective of that basic model which has.
But do you think there are gaps there? That's what I was trying.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Right. So there are in our research we have found, at least in the car buying process, there are 26 touch points with the consumers, out of which we have digitized 24. The one which we have not digitized, the actual physical delivery and the test drive. Although we have an option on our website, you can have an immersive, a virtual VR experience of a test drive. It is not so. Secondly, I think in India, the purchase of an automobile is the second largest purchase an Indian makes in his life. The first being the house. There, despite whatever digitalization you do, people do want to have a touch and feel of the product. It's like a house. I'm sure we are not going to buy a house by clicking a few buttons on our laptop. We're going to go there and see how's the neighborhood and all those things. So in India, especially because it's a very large because we are not a rich country, it's probably going to be taking more time because it becomes purely digital. Phygital is what we say it would be, and for some time in the future. Even in US, by the way, about 92% of the people visit the showroom, despite the fact that it's, if they want, they can actually be fully digitalized end to end. So back end or front end, I think the technology exists. And we are talking only of the process, by the way, Hormazd. And I think that is where I would like to add that spice element in the debate, which is in the discussion, which is that we also have to see the buying process itself being digitized. So when a customer walks in, what is the probability he'll buy a car? You have now AI ML software. By the retina movement, you can actually tell how likely he is to buy which type of car or which color. You have so much data now on consumers that you can actually, by cohort analytics, you can actually say what you can sell, cross sell, upsell, and so on. So it's not just about the buying process being digitalized. We recently did the finance part, as you know, the smart Maruti Suzuki Smart platform, which is people don't go out to look for finance, because once they go out to a third party aggregator, then they tell, why do you buy a Maruti? Why don't you buy this? And so on. Of course, they don't tell Martin that they buy Mercedes, but they sometimes say, why don't you buy, let's say, a Hyundai or some other product? So it's also good for marketing perspective. to digitalize even the finance part. And we have done that. But that is process digitalization. We are also talking about buying digitalization and in fact post-digitalization, post-buying process also. So there's a whole spectrum, right from the time he thinks to buy a car to actually when he decides to buy another car after selling off his own car. Everything can be digitalized, and I think technologies even today are available for it.
Right. And, Martin, just to get your thoughts again, just again from that point which Rakesh made, the whole digitalization portion, do you think there are gaps there that needs to be done, or a phygital kind of ecosystem is good enough? Shashank talked about the US. I don't think in the US they are as digitally savvy as in some countries with younger populations like ours. I think we are a lot more digitally savvy in that sense. So, as Rakesh said, in the insurance, they are so digital, they're completely digital. And is there a bit of a gap that needs to be kind of, looked at again, let's say digitizing the whole, let's say on the service side? Parts catalogs, all that sort of thing, which I know you've done, but I'm just saying from or is being done. Are there any gaps there, just from the customer to kind of give him a much more seamless kind of experience?
Would you allow me first to say a few thoughts about what Shashank was saying? Because obviously there is a little bit of a need of
clarification,
a bit deeper understanding. Yeah, if you're not
sure.
If you don't mind. Yeah, because for example, the question about is just to explain again, the direct sales model doesn't mean the cars were just online ordered or whatever. You have a sales consultant who sells the car in the dealership. He sells it on our behalf. And I think the core differential here is that he sells not the price, he sells the product. And that's something very different, which creates a completely different customer experience over time. The focus on the funnel and the upper funnel, as you mentioned, Shashank, I think is even better, because you can seamlessly integrate from whatever you do in your marketing to the actual transaction, because you see every step in the transaction until the eventual, you see everything. You see your production. I mean, I see my production. I suppose you see your production. You see from production to demand, to marketing activities, to what's happening in the showrooms, to in every step of the order to the actual transaction. So your overall channel management becomes and funnel management becomes much stronger. Of course, you need people who know how to do that, but that is coming. That's one thing. The other thing which I want to mention, if your concern is your logistics, I can clearly tell you your concern could be that you need a lot of cash to take over all the stocks and carry the inventories. That's the first concern, but the logistics is not a problem. You can do it more or less as today. We use also the storage locations of the dealers. It's only questions of remuneration. So overall, the potential of optimization in inventory cost is significantly high, and specifically if you combine that with your demand and your production side. So I can just make some advertisement for that, but I'm personally completely convinced, and I'm sure it's a journey. It took us 2 years to really implement. It's worthwhile discussing and thinking about it, but whether it's useful for you or for any other manufacturer, I don't know. I'm deeply convinced, and my first reactions of the customers show that as well. But coming to your question about digitization, Hormazd, yes, I also believe that everything and a lot can be digitized. Similar to what Shashank was saying, the potential is immense. And I would also think that the auto industry is, generally speaking, not at the very forefront of using all these tools. I see a lot of movement when we talk about the insurance and other, even the tomato, which we're talking about, integrated journeys. Is for many legacy or existing manufacturers still a way to go. And I'm fully aware that this is a focus area, because there is gaps in the journey, because you have different tools to integrate them. In the one hand, maybe you can do a front end, but in the back end, you still have, this time I mean an IT back end, Rakesh, you still have a lot of integration to be done. So I think this journey has started, but there is many more opportunities to do, and that is for sure an area that needs clearly to be focused if anyone wants to avoid that they get disrupted by whatever industry. So we need to be churn-free. We have to have a convenient approach to customers, and that again means also a strong online journey for everything. I mean, you have to, when you sell a car, you should also sell in the same process an insurance and of course and the financing. You should be able to do that in the same process so that for the customer it's seamless. That is in many instances possible, but in many not yet. Yeah, and I think there are gaps definitely that can be worked upon, and I would see the next few years will create another big movement there and changes there as well.
Right. Thanks for that, Martin. Yeah, I think I could sense you wanted to clarify a few things over there.
Hormazd, it's a topic we have, and I can clearly understand. We have discussed that for 2 years, in all types of rounds and going back and forth, So I'm really fully energized with the topic. That's why it's hard for me to listen. If I feel, let me talk to and have a deeper discussion, because, and honestly, Shashank, I will also be available offline to discuss anything, because I think really the ideas, they are interesting and they are generally applicable. That's at least my personal view, but it needs really a little bit dropping what we have done at least and think past and beyond the current brownfield situation which we all have. Yeah.
Right. No, definitely very interesting. Both of you all are two ends of the spectrum. I'm sure there will be some meeting ground in the middle, and I hope you all do discuss it offline. It's great to see, automotive industry sharing their thoughts. But, just moving on and, just going further into, the future of retail, future of, sales, ownership, experience. And again, Rakesh, just turning to you, I think, well, insurance is one thing. It's in a way quite one-dimensional in that sense, policies and premiums and stuff like that. But, going forward, additional services to be a differentiator in a competitive market. And, I just want to talk on things like, what can be offered. Is RSA going to be, is that something that, you're looking at as, kind of just bundling in that in as part of, what you'll offer. And I'm sure even that could be something OEMs look at, to give the added services which go beyond just the sale of the car and kind of, keep the customer engaged throughout the ownership life cycle.
No, absolutely, Hormazd. I think while you said RSA, Reliance has been the company which was the first to introduce a few free RSA with its, private car policy almost 5 years back. Because we could really sense a customer, is just not buying insurance. He's buying, in some sense, a peace of mind, emerging maybe out of an accident or a contingency. So it's not that an accident need not necessarily mean always a big thing. So, typical RSA of ours was also like, maybe delivering 5 liters of petrol if you're, stuck in a jam. I think what has emerged over the years is people have, or insurers have wanted to own the customer more holistically. And the consumers have used digital as a medium of also giving those orders back to insurers. So many of the things which we feel are peripheral has become now a part of our product offerings. I would also just extend this RSA thing. I think the next big thing which is catching up even in COVID time and all this thing is basically accidental health. It's not just about the car, it's also about the people inside. It can even be of the things which are surrounded. The liabilities environment are becoming huge and many people are wanting to be very cognizant of that. So I think in the ecosystem which we are moving in, data will be available, on the go. It's up to you what you want to fetch, why you want to fetch. Customers will obviously become more and more choosy, more and more demanding. Everything will change. Even, within a household, you could have multiple choices emerging. And everything will be required to be offered like a real-time thing. You won't have the luxury of, taking a day and saying, I will revert back to you with an estimate. So this is where I think, as insurance companies, our objective is also to differentiate. We are laying a lot of stress in profiling customers because a consumer, our research shows a same person, kind of in a span of 10 years, almost changes his choice 3 times over. And this is huge. We generally have static data and we generally keep those data like a storage item. And we often run our algos on static data. We don't blend that data with the changes which are taking place. So in some sense, digitization also comes with an objective. And that objective is built on customers. And I think what Mercedes is doing, Maruti is doing, everybody wanting to meet customer needs. I think time has come to really blend together all the customer analytics and make a product offering which keeps on automatically changing and give an experience which feels digital. A phygital experience is often people-based. I think advisory services will still be the order. You will find a Louis Vuitton bag will still sell with look and feel. That's not to conflict with the digital environment. It is basically to say a consumer gives a choice like this, and that is what we will be able to offer, be it digital, be it phygital, or a completely physical. But at the end of the day, we should be prepared to handle a customer, and digital will be maybe a mass market kind of an environment.
Right. No, thanks for that, Rakesh. And just moving on. Actually, we're running out of time. This, we've had a great discussion. Shashank, you want to add in something there, please?
Yeah. I was just wanting to clarify, this direct to customer sales model. I feel it's a great system. It's quite a different mindset. You obviously, whenever there is a big change or improvement in any given system, which has been there for a long time, you need to start with a absolutely different thinking. And I think that's what Martin was indicating. And my idea is not to pick holes in that. It's just that, my idea was to, of course, learn from the system. And I'll take Martin's advice and offer that to get in touch with him offline to learn things. Of course, I think in the whole process, I still feel at the top end of the funnel, the salesperson and the dealer, I know the Indian consumer and the Indian salespeople quite well, I feel. And this may not exactly work out. That I feel may be a weak point in this entire system. That's why I mentioned it. But of course, I'm happy to learn. I used to learn from GM and Ford heads of marketing and sales as well. And of course, there's no reason why I can't learn from Mercedes or others as well.
Great, Shashank. But I just want to go much more forward. Actually, we're talking about the future of retail, and let's face it, the future is going to be all electric in some time, and maybe even autonomous. And Shashank, just turning to you, when we look at this, the way the car market is evolving, the way technology is evolving, the way consumers are evolving, do you feel cars are getting maybe more commoditized with electric? They might even become more one-dimensional, because frankly, the character might go, it's just, they start looking quite similar. And here the differentiation really is on, let's say, service products. Rakesh talked about RSA. I mean, it's something maybe electric car owners do want. You run out of charge, someone just turns up with either a emergency charger or a flatbed. Do you think this is going to be a differentiator? And, is there a worry that, let's say cars, especially the mass end, might get a little bit more commoditized, or will design and all still play a future? And future of retail, clearly the ownership whole experience, which is, what is Maruti's strength, that will become even more important.
Yes, surely. I would agree with that. With the convergence of technology, I think this commoditization is already happening. Of course, it's not as if it's commoditized, because there are many elements which you can differentiate even in design of your brands, in the communication that you do, in the criteria of consumer purchase that you stress upon, in the experience that you provide at the dealership, in the after-sale service that you do. So there is a whole bunch of things which would still remain, where you can differentiate yourself from the other brands. So in that sense, it's not commoditized. But yes, in the pure product, underlying product sense, maybe. But I think like any other technology, quickly something else will emerge, even when if it's the EVs, for example, that some differentiation even in technology or something will happen that would make brand differentiation so essential. And by the way, I think the trust portion, which you talked about, which is also relating to the network you have, the experience you give to consumers, etc. That trust is something which is difficult to commoditize, and that could be a big brand differentiation, especially in these times.
Yeah, that you can't commoditize. It's earned over years and decades of kind of building on
Yes.
that. So no, thanks, Shashank, for that thing. And obviously, Martin, yeah, your end, I don't think Mercedes can ever be commoditized. But this whole move to EV, there is a thing of just a simple question: will cars become cheaper to service and maintain? I mean, is that something which could have an impact on how you, let's say, retail cars? Obviously, service schedules may be much less, going. I'm sure that there could be some disruption on the retail front just by the way the technology is.
I mean, at the end, when you sell a car or specifically an electric car, you would always want to give the customer a worry-free experience. And that's probably what your starting point is. And that's why also, for example, you try to include then, for example, electric vehicle operation or offering. You can then also include a couple of things which might be customer worries. Yeah, that can be from charging to servicing to warranty. Different elements of that you can include, and we have done that as well. So you can. That's one thing. And then, of course, when it comes to after sales, then it's a known fact that some of the mechanical components they will not be needed in future replacement. So there is no need for an oil change as such. So that is certainly not there. But of course, you will have a lot of Rakesh business will remain, because I don't think people will drive without getting into accidents. So time will somehow tell also when it comes to the entire utilization of electric cars, what the real weaknesses will be. We also know electronics can fail, for example. It's not that they would never fail. So there's a couple of things which we all need still to learn, but it's clear mechanical components will be less. And that is something your customer will not then have to worry about. Other topics will remain. New ones might come when you think about battery life cycles and so forth. New questions might come then also in terms of how to deal with that in future. But overall, I think the EV journey has begun, and it's in that sense unstoppable. It will happen.
Right. Thanks, Martin, for that. And as I said, we're really running out of time. Rakesh, I'd like to give you the last word. Clearly, looking at electric vehicles, from your point of view, our premiums going to come down. They're going to be more reliable, and looking really in the future, autonomous cars where they don't bang into each other. I mean, as an insurance company, looking at this scenario, I just wanted your thoughts.
No, absolutely. I think insurers are fed by data and experience. So I think if accidents do come down, obviously that will be a fit case for the premiums to go down. Having said that, I feel the character of the liabilities will be very different. As Martin rightly said, we might be having less of components, but you may have a software also feeling. And what I personally feel that the liabilities, when you are going digital and you are promising something electric, I think the guaranteeing thing will go up significantly, and consumers will hence be far more vigilant, aware about what they should get. And things becoming real time means it's like an ATM. No, you can't hold it wrong if 1 out of even 1,000 transactions goes wrong. So I think somewhere a phygital environment gave some leeway to a lot of people to get away with things. Those things will slip away. So somewhere the character of the business will still remain. Risk will manifest in different ways. But end of the day, this accident may come down, but liabilities will go up. So we'll move towards warranties and liabilities insurance, I feel.
Right. Thanks for that, Rakesh. And, really, it's been a very interesting discussion. Shashank, for me, the main takeaway, as you said, is that trust is going to be very important. And I think that's one thing that's a constant. However much cars change, whether we go digital, phygital, or whatever, I think the trust factor is super important. And that's something that's built up over years. And Martin, I think you've taken a pioneering step, which I think a lot of people are watching. Even a mass manufacturer like Maruti is watching. There's been an interesting discussion on this thing, on your thing. And I can see the conviction with which you believe in the new retail of the future. Obviously, I think now you do have the enviable position of having the first mover advantage. So you've done all the hard work. You know what the challenges are, and that is going to be your secret sauce going forward. And Rakesh, thanks for your inputs from the insurance side. Clearly, one can see that for you, we aren't going digital fast enough. You are in a completely new digital ecosystem and want more of it. But clearly, I think even for insurance companies, there is a lot of opportunities and let's say I would say even disruptions along the way with the way cars are evolving. But thanks very much. And yes, I think it's an exciting future. Tough to predict in this very volatile world, but I think Indians, the market is robust. There are blue skies eventually, and with that, just wish you all the best and thanks so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Thank you, Martin.
Nice weekend. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Shashank. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh.